Alright, I don't know what order I'm going to post these videos, so let me just tell you what's happening. I had put these 6-degree shims under the leaf pack to correct the pinion angle. That worked really good, but then after the fact I ordered some bushings for these leaf springs. So now I'm back where I started. I've got to pull the U-bolts off. I'm just gonna again lift the car, leave the axle on the jack stands, and then take the bolts out of the shackles and the front of the spring eye and take each spring pack off to get these bushings out because they are toast. I should have done that when I had all this taken apart. You can take this leaf pack and just kind of wiggle it left and right, and it still makes that kind of clunk, putting it into reverse or drive sometimes. And that's the culprit. So I've got some polyurethane from Energy Suspension. I like their stuff. It's American made. And I'm just like one day away from a Summit warehouse, so I'll just order it, get it the next day. I've got it right now. Let's put them on. Okay, so I'm coming to the end of this passenger side, but I've discovered I've got a couple of issues here. I've was forced to make some modifications to some of the bushings, so let me show you what I'm doing. This is the shackle end, okay? The bushing that goes in the shackle, the smaller one, there's a pair of those, one for each side. It goes in there perfectly. All right, you see the inner sleeve, that metal part, the inner sleeve, when that bolt goes through there and crushes the mounting tabs on the frame, the inner sleeve is held stationary because the tension that's put on that bolt and nut. So this 1/8 inch gap means that the shackle and the spring can move around even though that inner sleeve is held stationary. So that's a great fit. Now, the spring eye bushings, however, are the opposite. So, when the bushings are seated against one another, I've got 0.135 inches where it's shy, okay? So just over 1/8 of an inch. So when I put the bolt through here, let's say that this goes right there. Right now it won't even fit because the bushings are too wide. If I put that bolt, if I somehow manage to squeeze this in there and then put that bolt in there and compress it until these mounting tabs rest against the inner sleeve, because that's what you want right there. The inner sleeve goes in there, the bolt goes through there, you put some tension, compression on it, and the inner sleeve is held stationary. It doesn't need to rotate. Okay, that's the job of the bushing. And the outer sleeve is essentially the spring eye. If I were to try to do that, I'm going to compress more than 1/8 inch of this bushing and probably deform it and do all sorts of wonky stuff. It's going to put a lot of tension inside the housing or inside the outer sleeve because it's going to want to bulge this portion of the bushing out. So I called Energy Suspension. They said, maybe you got the wrong part. I gave him the part number. He said, okay, you got the right part. Maybe you got the wrong springs. I said, maybe it did get lift springs at some point in its life, but the fact remains the shackle is original and the mounting tabs on the truck are original, and this inner sleeve that came out of the old bushings is the same width or length, well, I can't pull this apart one-handed, but as the new inner sleeve in that kit. So I know that the sleeve is correct. It would just appear that the bushings are too wide. So the tech guy at Energy Suspension said, well, you know, maybe stick it in the freezer, see if they'll shrink up. That ain't gonna happen for that much to make up more than 1/8 of an inch. So I asked if I could just trim them. He said, sure, have at it, not a problem. So that's what I did. So I'll show you how I did that. I just stacked both of them together on this new inner sleeve. So that left basically that amount hanging off of the edge that I just took my reciprocating saw, made a cut into it, then just took my utility knife, razor, to finish cutting around, and just kind of beveled the edge there. So now, hold on just a sec. Okay. Now when I put them back together, wait. You can see it's flush on this side, flush on this side. And I've got just under 1 millimeter gap in there. So when that bolt goes through there and crushes or, you know, compresses these tabs, now it's not going to be crushing the bushing. It's going to hold that sleeve stationary, so the sleeve's not rolling around, and the bushings can still move around inside that leaf eye, which is what we want. So I'm going to continue doing that to the other bushings. Now I'm only going to do one side per bushing. So I've got a total of 4 of these to shave down, and then I can finally get it put back together. And here we are, wrapped up. New bushings, front and back, and the shackles. I'm pleased with the way it turned out. It's nice and smooth. There's no noise. I think that's one of the reasons some people stay away from polyurethane is you have this idea that it's going to create a harsh ride and that it's going to be real squeaky over every bump, just squeak, squeak, squeak. I've not encountered that really, and this car is no exception. I made sure to be liberal in my application of grease in those bushings, you know, putting it together, and also, as we discussed earlier, trimming those bushings to fit. I think we might have a problem. It might be harsh, it might squeak if the bushings were incorrect, but since we trimmed them 0.135 inches, so a dry fit, they would go in this bracket without having to spread those mounting tabs. Because remember, when this bolt is through there and I torque it down, the inner sleeve is what's maintaining the distance between the outer mounting tab and the inner mounting tab, and the bushing material can still move around the inner sleeve, but that sleeve does not move. Now if the sleeve were too short, or if the mounting tabs encountered the bushing material first, it's going to compress and collapse that bushing material, just deform it until these mounting tabs finally contact that inner sleeve. So that's why it's important that those bushings are the right width. And I'm glad that I spoke with Energy Suspension and got the approval to basically go ahead and trim that to fit, because the end result is perfect.